Hey guys, this is Rocky from WeLearnChess.com, and in this video I just want to show you a common tactic that can come up in the King's Gambit accepted games in the middle game. In this video I'll just quickly show you one variation where it could happen, and then in the next video I'll show you a game that I came across when I was looking through some games, and so that we can see it in a different variation but in action. So this is just the opening here, the King's Gambit accepted, and we get this Fischer defense. I'm not going to go into the details of this because it's covered elsewhere on other sites and a little bit on my site too. So these moves are pretty standard, and c3 is played here to add some protection to the d4 pawn, but as we'll see in this tactic, sometimes that's not enough. Okay, so here per Bobby Fischer's recommendation, black should not be scared to castle kingside, so that's what he's going for here. And here we see one of the issues where this pawn on c4 can become a little bit weak. So this knight has blocked the queen's communication down to this pawn. So right now it's being defended still twice. It's being defended by a pawn and by this knight. But okay, let's make a couple more moves. Castles. Now here, actually, instead of knight d2, a lot of times you'll see queen b3, which kind of forces castling. And then the game could go on from there. A lot of times the knight will come to c6 with the idea of maybe going over to a5 and forking these two pieces. So it's possible that sometimes white players who have seen sort of that this queen b3 doesn't really amount to too much other than probably forcing the issue of castling may or may not develop this way. I've kind of seen some players do it, some players don't. I mean, I guess forcing the issue is sort of beneficial to white just to make sure he's not going long. But at the same time, black's probably thinking about castling short in these lines anyway, so I'm not quite sure how helpful that really is. I think the computer gives it his best move, but I haven't looked at it in a while. But okay, let's take a look at just a different variation. So let's say a player doesn't play this and they want to just keep developing their pieces. So they go for something like knight d2. And let's say that they have an idea of fianchettoing this dark square bishop just to oppose the long diagonal. I've seen this done quite a bit as well. So let's say that they play b3, which seems pretty logical, so they want to put this bishop on this b2 square. And here actually, after knight c6, black is kind of already in position here to do this tactic. There's still a little too much protection here on this pawn. So if white doesn't make a move to address this tactic in this position, then black can already start a combination. So let's just say that white makes a sort of a non-specific move, like if they're not playing maybe aggressive enough or forceful enough, which already probably they haven't been. Let's say they play something like queen c2. So maybe with the idea of like dropping the bishop back to point down this battery down this diagonal, maybe keep expanding these pawns down the queen side in the center, something like that. So sort of the idea of where maybe the bishop has already done its job on c4 and could come back. I've seen these kind of maneuvers too in these games that I've played, so it's not like it's totally impossible you can get this. Actually, stuff like this comes up kind of frequently. So not so much queen c2, but just in general the ideas of maybe wanting to fianchetto with a dark square bishop. Also, that usually happens pretty late in the game, so a lot of times the rooks are not connected for white for quite a while. And yeah, I mean, the queen could go to different squares, but just for the sake of example. So this this non-specific move that's not really forcing black to do anything, not creating really an immediate threat. This allows black to automatically go for this tactic. So he can start with g4, which bumps this knight. The knight is one of the only defenders of this d4 pawn. So, okay, so g4. Oops, just got a little wacky. g4, and the knight probably has to go back. I mean, I guess it could probably try to go over, but then maybe there's discoveries with this knight and the queen coming up and things like that. I think the computer recommends going back here. However, of course you could see other moves. But here now we already have this tactic, so probably you've already kind of spotted the idea because I keep talking about d4. So here we have knight takes d4. The only piece that can recapture is this pawn. And then we have the bishop showing its might on the long diagonal here with the check, and forking the rook here. So after the king moves, or, well, yeah, something can't really block here. It's not going to block the rook. So king moves, takes, and here it looks like we're actually even going to get out with the bishop, or, maybe he'll try to somehow force a trade here. Like, maybe you could do this just to make sure that my dark squares are weak. So something like that, where black has had to give up one of the key defenders of his king. But, of course, he's gotten an exchange out of the deal. So, yeah, it still would be tough to play because you do have the remaining rook is looking down the f-file. The queen is looking in. This bishop's still pretty well placed. And the knights are not great right now, but they do have, especially this knight, I think, has a little more potential. Especially you could think of maybe like an e5 push, followed by the knight trying to come in through one of these squares. Also, this knight is a little bit far away, but of course it can get back in the game. So black does have to figure out a way to untangle his pieces, but this should be a winning position for black if he plays accurately. And so this middle game tactic is something that can come up. Alright, so that's it for this video. Let's take a look at a little bit more in detail about how that tactic can come about and what kinds of criteria have to be in place to make it work. See you around for the next video.